Thank you. Hopefully we'll probably have some more folks dropping in. My name's David Gordon, and I happen to be the chairman of the POW-MIA committee. Actually, we'll call it the Joint Special Operations Association and Special Forces Association POW-MIA committee. And this is for their supposed symposium.
David, speak up a little.
Okay, how's that better? Yeah. I guess I got it right next to this thing. Oh boy, that's going to be great. Anyway, I want to thank, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being here. We have quite a full agenda for today, or for this morning. Please turn off your phones, and I guess now your watches. That's new on the thing. If you have to, we're not having any breaks in this. If you have to, take your break and come on back. So now those are the administration. We have our presenters today will be Ann Mills Griffith from a Family League of POW-MIAs. She'll be later, and she'll introduce her more about her mission, POW-MIA, and then we'll have the Defense Prisoner of War, Missing in Action. Excuse me. Sometimes accounting agency. I'm getting confused here. So those will be our presenters today. Afterwards, when all the presentations are done, we'll have a Q&A period, and I'll discuss a little more on that as we get closer to it. Right now, I'd like to introduce our committee members that we have. Some of them are here, some of them can't be, but I will announce all of them. Committee members, if you just raise your hand or stand as I announce. We have Wayne Ishimoto right here in the center. Thanks, Wayne. Ishi actually is that he likes to go by. We have John Tilt Myers. Thank you, John. Mike Island. Thank you, Mike. Jack Cole. Steve Thompson. Jim Kimo Wheeler. Thank you, Jim. Jim Storton. Jim, thank you. People that could not, and we have Cliff Goodrich. I'm not sure if he's here. Mike Goodrich. I'm not sure if he's here or not. Oh, good to see you. And to have two people who could not make it. Jim Latham, he has some family issues that he has to deal with, and Cliff Newman had some medical issues. And about Cliff, a quick note on that. He has been to every SOA reunion up until this one. He's been to all 48 of them. He's missing 49. We're hoping he can be here tomorrow for the next one for the SOA 50th reunion. We have a couple of guests I'd like to present. Note that they're here. We have the Special Operations Association President, Doug Godshaw. Thank you, Doug. And the Special Forces Association President, Chris. Excuse me, Chris. So yeah, I get a little trying to get the names here. My eyes are not what they used to be, as with most of us. We have a former, I believe we have both former POW members here. Steve Leopold, are you here? Back there. Thank you for being here, Steve. We're glad you made it. And Ike Camacho. Were you able to make it this morning? Some of this a little early. I'd also like to recognize all the Gold Star and any other members, guests who still have family members still missing in action, still unaccounted for. Would you please either stand or raise your hand so you can be recognized? I'd like to talk a minute how things have changed. Due to the government shutdown, we've had to do some significant changes for this symposium. Unfortunately, anyone who works for the government, to include military, could not travel and many who work for the government could not even be on the Zoom meeting. So we have set up a Zoom meeting with Hawaii with some special efforts from very special people who I'd like to recognize before we get into the actual presentations. Don Haas, one of the directors, and his son and his grandson, and his son, Dan over here, and his grandson, Brandon, who was taking care of the cameras. They stepped in and helped with the technical aspects. Sam Erickson, who you see sitting here in the blue shirt, he is from the Savage Game Design, which you'll see part in the far corner. They loaned him to us so he could put these things together. We also had Rich Benjamin, who is on the video in the back, and he'll be filming this whole thing. And from Hawaii, Master Sergeant Ian McFarland. With all of the help and the media specialists from the Orleans, which they're not used to trying to do this, but they jumped in with all those people. It's the only reason we put this together. And the last two, this being the third day, we have been putting this whole Zoom thing together. They're not used to doing it. We're not used to doing it. So I'm just happy that it's coming through. Now, what I'd like to do is we'll go into the presentations. We'll discuss some of the other things a little bit later. First presenter is going to be Ms. Ann Mills Griffith from the League of Families. She has always has a lot of good information for us. So, Ann, please.
Yeah. He warned me in advance I have to talk into this really close, so I'm going to try to do that and do it right. First of all, I truly appreciate the opportunity to again be here with you by your presence in this session. You confirm you haven't forgotten your brothers that are not yet returned. It also shows you recognize the importance of not only honoring and remembering them, but standing with them and all who serve our country. Something I believe in strongly, is so strongly it has been my life's work for more than 50 years. As many of you know, my closest brother, then Navy Lieutenant Jim Mills, was listed MIA in North Vietnam in September of 1966 and was miraculously recovered in 2018, 52 years later. But nobody in my family ever thought we would get him home. There was simply no information. Disappeared, off the radar, going a few hundred miles an hour over the coast of North Vietnam on a night low-flying bombing mission. There was absolutely nothing to go from. Had it not been for a Vietnamese fisherman snagging his net on aircraft wreckage in the shallow water along the coast, they wouldn't have even found anything. That wreckage turned out to be from the F-4 my brother served on as radar intercept officer. A fluke, maybe, but for us it was truly miraculous, but in reality, quite certain that the Vietnamese made sure it happened, either to get rid of me or to thank me for all of my many years of effort. It didn't work either way, so. But one doesn't fly off an aircraft carrier, in this instance the USS Coral Sea, fully loaded at night, low flying like I said, and then disappear off radar and you don't expect to find them. You just don't. We were blessed beyond expectations, ending our uncertainty and watching him receive full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery, as has long been planned. Often mentioned in today's military services is the comment, "Leave no man behind," a sentiment with which all of us agree, but realistically it was not possible during the Vietnam War, including for the 58 MACV SOG guys still missing and unaccounted for in Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. In fact, those now serving would be unlikely to know that this meaningful, significant mantra just like the missing man table came from Air Force efforts in 1967 in people stationed in Thailand, who they were losing a lot of at that time. But I think it is very important that we have that mantra for those serving today. And the League has, whoops, something happened. I'm missing a page because I didn't leap into that. See, that's what happens when everything is so, well, what I was going to say. I don't know what I did. Well, I will just go on to what I have now here as page 4. But during this time, the League worked increasingly hard with all the support of the veteran service organizations to get DPA formed into what it is today. It started out small, tiny, very few, well, nobody who started out at that early date is still with the organization. And the one that was with it the longest, Johnny Webb, just retired last year. But he was there in 1985 when I was also there for the first field excavation that was conducted in North Vietnam. I think it's important also for you to know the League has never been government funded. It was a necessity to us to maintain our independence, the ability to advocate for the best possible official efforts to bring home our missing men and get answers for their families. This policy that brings a lot of funding challenges, shall we say. I've learned a lot about our government and how it really works, as have many of you from some of the programs I've been watching over the last 2 days. But I've learned also a lot about people and diverse cultures, from years of travel to Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Russia, UK, Europe, but primarily Vietnam. That's because 85 to 90% of all the incidents involving Americans, whether ground or air, that were captured and missing in Laos and Cambodia occurred in areas controlled by Vietnam, as well as in Vietnam. What I've learned more than anything else is the importance of honesty, determination, reliability, and commitment, more than anything else, but also to principles, integrity, and shared purpose to achieve common goals that benefit all. In late February to early March of 2024, I led a critical League delegation which engaged meaningfully with all 3 countries and very high-level Lao, Cambodian, and Vietnamese officials. That's only because I've been there forever and we've sort of all been raised together. And all officials that deal with the United States in any capacity are thoroughly trained from the very beginning of their State Department or Defense Department, or what we call, well, War Department, whatever. They're all trained from inception into government service for dealing with the United States and the complete history of our relationship. And though concerned over disappointment recently on circumstances in Laos, I'll defer to the Q&A session in the interest of time. But if anyone wishes to raise a question, please feel free. Or you can ask me later today or tomorrow. I've been around for a couple days already. Cooperation by Cambodia is excellent and fully endorsed by Prime Minister Hun Manet, with whom we met while there. He is the son of longtime leader, His Excellency Hun Sen, and I've worked with him since 1984, personally and directly. Any questions related to Cambodia should have been raised to Eric Phillips, the highly trained Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, intelligence specialist. He served in Cambodia for 7 years and is now the DIA Stony Beach Director of Operations. Later in this program, Eric would have addressed our heroes and our hopes and expectations for implementing the now approved Mobile Investigation Unit. Former Minister of Public Security To Lam serves Oops, I did it again. It's hard when you have no. There we go. He serves. We propose the Mobile Investigation Unit, or MIU, directly to the Deputy Minister of Public Security and the Vietnam Office for Seeking Missing Persons, VNOSMP. And we did that on March 13th, 2024. Our MIU proposal was not only approved, but Minister of Public Security To Lam, who was then traveling with the Prime Minister, personally burst into our meeting in Hanoi when he got back and enthusiastically endorsed the MIU, as he did the intelligence assessment that Dr. Jay Vyth had done for the League. That assessment was based totally on Jay's knowledge of Vietnamese records and their ability to apply to the cases of our missing in all three countries, those in Vietnamese-controlled areas. This report was critical to U.S. accounting efforts. The three-person investigation team that we proposed was only one person each, from DIA, DPAA, and one from Vietnam at the official level, national level, and one from whatever province was being visited. That was after much negotiation, and it's because of the way the Vietnamese have for years imposed incredible fees for each report, for each visit, for each everything, and I'm talking enormous fees. I've seen the evidence of that, including one was signed by the director, past director, for an advance of an extra $1 million before a joint field investigation or excavation even got started. And we're talking millions and millions. But this MIU is critical to the small team. It's the last best hope, really, for Vietnam War accounting over the next 4 to 5 years, particularly if we can't convince the Vietnamese, which I think we can if we're really serious about it, to provide their records. Because of To Lam's enthusiasm is the reason I say that. But it will be more difficult, if not impossible, to find surviving witnesses that are still able to provide useful information in that amount of time. So it should have been adopted already. Eric would have been and is much more qualified than I to describe the Mobile Investigation Unit, since he's the Director of Operations to implement it. But because of the government shutdown, he isn't here, and he wasn't included in what's going to be a fascinating and first time ever mobile or virtual experience for all of us, seeing the results of this briefing. But former Minister of Public Security To Lam now serves as the General Secretary of the Communist Party, the recognized leader of Vietnam for years to come. Before we left the public security meeting in Vietnam on March 13th of last year, General Secretary To Lam even invited us to come back in April of 2025 so we could celebrate increased results. Well, unfortunately, that meant a significant progress should have been made by now, but implementation has been delayed due to the need for bilateral talks to settle compensation and operational differences, now reportedly endorsed and supported, but it's still not funded and the government's on shutdown now. But it was the General Secretary To Lam's enthusiastic support was obviously deliberate, well-planned, influenced by knowing he was about to assume the highest position in the country, and he also had extensive plans to expand the relationship between his country and the U.S., including bilateral and multilateral economic and policy considerations and international objectives. That was evident when he was the first call President Trump received after he issued the tariffs, and has been very, very closely linked in all the coverage since that time, and for a good reason. To Lam is unique. He and I have known each other for a very long time, and he knows, even though I would often have to say to him, since I'm always honest with him, things that he didn't want to hear, but he knew I was telling him the truth. And for that reason, there is a unique relationship there that goes back a few decades. And we've been blessed by that and by their understanding of how our government works and increasing recognition that they've got to do a lot more. And while TOLAM is there, believe me, it's the time to act. But in closing, I want to appeal for much more active SOA and SFA engagement in generating much stronger U.S. focus on bringing home your missing and unaccounted for MacV-SOG brothers and America's other Vietnam War veterans, or whatever the need might be. SOA and SA voices, as you all know or should know by now, carry far and wide, especially with Congress. Please let them know of your personal interest and stay on alert to detect any reduction of effort that you hear about. And especially the viable effort to pursue answers on our Vietnam War POWs and MIAs, that original status. But on your fellow unreturned SOA personnel, it's important to emphasize that focus. People recognize the close link that you all have and what your service means to our country. Unlike anybody else's, it's now, yes, it was interesting presentation yesterday to listen to the joint service cooperation in all the special forces operations and endeavors. That is encouraging. But we need to find help, ways to help. DIA Stony Beach specialists, and fully supported, I hope, by now, by DPAA and the U.S. embassies in all of the relevant countries. But thank you again for having me back. I'm always inspired by being here with you. There are no other organizations like SOA, and it's nice to get to meet some of the folks I've never met from SFA. So thanks again for having me here, and it is my honor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ann. Always, your presentations have a great deal of information and help for us, and let us know what you finding out in your experience in working with this project of bringing our unaccounted for back home. Before we get into the next presentation, I want to recognize somebody. Those of you who have seen these posters that you see up here, the Mrs. Jeannie Huffman, Dave Huffman, who will be the next presenter, his wife did the illustrations on all of these, which I've noticed that you have. I've seen people just sit in front of them and watch and look and count and point to the folks that they knew or worked with. And I want to thank you very much, Jeannie, again, for having helped us put this together. Our next presentation will be by Dave Huffman, who is the Executive Director for Mission POW MIA. He's done a tremendous amount of work in trying to get people, get recognized, get over to Vietnam, being of artifacts and things. These are things that he'll talk about, and getting stuff to DPAA. And it's a new and added source to help can bring our unaccounted back home. Dave?
Thank you, everybody. Pleasure to be here today. This is our third time coming to the conventions. So David asked me today to make sure that I talk about what we've done and what we're doing. So we're going to jump right into it. Search is our core values. It stands for seeking the fullest possible accounting, engaging partner organizations like SOA, advocating for our families. That includes spreading awareness, and it also includes attending government meetings and helping them when they're having their case summary reviews. The R is for research and investigation. The C is for conducting outreach and education, and the H is for honoring and remembering the service and sacrifice of our missing men and their families. So when you look up I know I'm in a room full of Green Berets, and I'm going to commit heresy when I say the Navy SEALs say the only easy day was yesterday, right? This was our yesterday. So this is the last 34 months. These are the efforts that we put together. Traveled over 95,000 miles. We've done 140 events. And events are talks, they're displays, they're things of that nature where we go and we're an actual participant or we have actually planned the event. So we're averaging about one event a week over the last 34 months. And you can see the other numbers. A couple of big ones, 600 plus Vietnam vets welcomed home. We're partners with the Vietnam War Commemoration. And if you have not received your Vietnam War Commemoration lapel pin, I brought 100 of them with us. We've been pinning vets the last couple of days. So come see us and we'll pin you and officially welcome you home. We've also pinned families of the unaccounted for with the Vietnam War Commemoration pin. 100 plus posters. David mentioned Jeannie created these posters up here for SOA. There's 100 posters on our website. Each state, the missing men by state, the Cold War, you name it, they're on there. Two of the posters are, one's hanging in West Point in the Rocky Versace Chapel for the missing West Pointers, and the other one is now being displayed in Annapolis. So the next one up will be the Air Force Academy. For our membership are made up of family members from the Vietnam War, World War II, and the Cold War. We also have concerned citizens. We have a lot of veterans that are part of our organization. We have a lot of veteran service organizations that sponsor us. And any Medal of Honor recipient, former POW, or surviving spouse, if you're interested in becoming a member, it's an automatic lifetime membership for you. One of the programs that we're very proud of that we started 2 years ago was a partnership with the U.S. Army ROTC Cadet Command at Fort Knox, Kentucky. The first year we presented what we call the Mission POW MIA Character and Courage Award. It's presented in honor of the service and sacrifice of American POWs and our missing in action and their families. The first year we gave out two, one to each of the graduates from their basic camp. The Army contacted us and said, we'd like you to expand your program. Would you start doing it for the advanced camp as well? So now at each of the camps, this past summer we did 12, 2 basic camps and 10 advanced camps. These are all future second lieutenants in the U.S. Army. There's usually a crowd of between 1,000 and 1,500 there, including the graduating cadets. So they hear the words POW MIA at those ceremonies. There's also a large flag that flies over the parade field, a large POW MIA flag that flies over the parade field at Fort Knox, Kentucky. National POW MIA Recognition Day this year, the poster was created for the first time ever for the DoD by Jeannie Huffman. And that poster that you see up there represents all conflicts: World War II, Cold War, Korean War, Vietnam, and Persian Gulf conflicts. All of the models are former or current ROTC cadets and an active duty U.S. Marine. So they're portraying each of the service members that are missing. The thing about the poster is if you look closely, each of the service members is holding something in their hand: a compass, a map, binoculars, a survival radio, a field radio. All of that's designed to help them find their way home. So there's symbolism throughout the entire poster. And we were proud to have that. And we were able to meet Secretary of War Hegseth at the Pentagon for National Recognition Day. A little later that day, our president, Cindy Stonebreaker Reed, her dad is MIA, Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth Stonebreaker, U.S. Air Force, presented a wreath at Arlington National Cemetery at the Tomb of the Unknowns. Interesting thing. If you ever want something to do late at night and you're just thinking of, hey, what's something I don't know about? Look up First Lieutenant Michael Blasey. He was the unknown soldier. And you'll learn all about why there's not an unknown soldier in the tomb anymore. We do go twice a year to the tomb and present a wreath in honor of all those still missing in action. And that is on National POW MIA Recognition Day and also Memorial Day. Operation HART. This is one of our programs. HART stands for the Honorable Exchange of Artifacts for Resolutions in Time. The man you see in the picture is the heart behind Operation HART. U.S. Marine Corps Corporal Johnny Johnson. He was in south of Da Nang during Operation Allenbrook in May of 1968 when he stormed an enemy bunker. The reason he stormed the enemy bunker was because of all of the gunfire. He was deaf and he didn't hear the other Marines say, stop. And he went into the bunker by himself. When he came out of the bunker, after he had engaged the enemy, he brought these artifacts out with him. And he's had them in his possession ever since. He knew the date, the time, the location, because just 3 days later, he was shot while he was on a one-man outpost. And he laid there all night. And he said he never prayed to live. He only prayed that if they came to get him, it was going to be quick. Well, he made it through the night. He crawled all the way back to the command post. They medevaced him out. So Johnny heard about us and what we do and why we were looking for artifacts, and he donated these artifacts to us. And we're in the process right now of arranging another artifact exchange using his artifacts. These are some of the artifacts that we collected. Is Dan in the room? Dan, Dan, stand up, buddy. I want to thank Dan, if everybody could. Last year after this presentation, Dan came up to me and he said, I've got something for you. And he presented that knife that he captured in Laos. And we've had that knife with us, and when we travel around and do talks, we have a small display of the types of artifacts we're looking for. That knife led to Johnny donating his artifacts. So this is a really important project that we're doing. And there's been so many veterans groups that have donated items back to Vietnam and never asked for anything in return. Well, when you go into the Vietnamese museum system, you see lots and lots of American MIA artifacts on display there. Active MIA cases that are just sitting there. We want those back. We want those back for our families and those that are still missing. These are the types of things we're looking for. If you have anything that matches this list or something else that you're ready to part with, when it's your time to part with it, please reach out and contact us. These are the types of things that you see in the Vietnamese museums. ID cards, dog tags, blood chits, helmets with logos, the unit markings on them. These things can help lead to trying to find out who those items belong to. Obviously, an ID card says their name, has their picture on it. But that helmet right there, we know that helmet was from VF-143 out of Oceana, Virginia Beach, Virginia, right around the corner from where we live at Oceana NAS. The wallet. The wallet started the whole thing before we even had the title Operation HART. I had a former boss of mine. I've been a law enforcement officer for 37 years. And one of my former chiefs was a Vietnam veteran, and he gave me this wallet before we went to Vietnam last summer. And he said, if you can get something for it, get something good. Well, we traveled around Vietnam with that wallet. We showed that wallet off. You see this general there. He's the head of the Vietnamese Family Martyrs Association. He's looking at the wallet. We carried it 1,000 miles with us by vehicle from Hanoi all the way down to Hoi An and then back up to Da Nang. When we left, we decided that we were going to give the wallet to the Defense POWMIA Accounting Agency detachment in Hanoi, with the provision that that soldier, that sergeant, said, get something good for it. Well, during the tech talks that year, the wallet was exchanged to the Vietnamese. And what the Vietnamese provided was the dog tag of this missing Air Force aviator. We don't have his remains. The story's still open, but that's his 75-year-old son who I had a Zoom meeting with when he got the dog tag back, wearing it around his dad's neck. And he was very thankful to us, to the DPAA, to the Vietnamese, and to that friend of mine who wants to remain anonymous. So this program works. And it may not lead to a case progression, but it may lead to some peace for a family. In the Thanh Hoa Provincial Museum, we saw this display. Those are a bunch of different pilots. They're not all the same guy. And you find that out in the museums. They take artifacts and mix them and match them and move them around, and they transfer them to museums. In this particular display, there's an ID card there. And I asked, could I look at the ID card? The Vietnamese were very cooperative. They opened up every case. They let me look at everything I want to look at. They let me photograph it. They let me videotape it. In some cases, I even measured it, like if I was looking at a boot. But in this case, as soon as I flipped the ID card over, I said, this is not real. This is a copy. Do you have the real one? And they went into the basement of the museum and brought the real one out. The fake one's on the left, the real one's on the right. You could smell the real one because it had been in the water, and you could smell the mold. So what does this mean for Captain Magnuson, who was posthumously promoted to major? He's considered non-recoverable. He's been considered non-recoverable for 60 years. His last words were, I'm ejecting, I'm ejecting. No other information. In 2018, DIA Stony Beach found the copy in the museum. The original was still in the basement. The original came out during our visit, and we asked them if they had anything else. Once we were able to photograph it and again smell it and verify that that was a real identification, we decided we wanted to do something for Major Magnuson and his family. Major Magnuson's family had been out of the issue for over 15 years because of the way the family had been treated by various groups. And they had just cut off communications. Tracked them down through obituaries and things of that nature, and led to some phone calls. Finally, the daughter returned my call, and she told me that she tells people now, if the crazy man calls you, pick up the phone. Because this could have been a scam. Somebody trying to rip off the family, right? And I had to say in my call, I'm not trying to rip you off, which anybody that was trying to rip somebody off would say, right? So they finally got through. We made a connection. We learned that after their dad went missing, all their possessions on a ship coming home caught fire and burned. So they had nothing. They had no photographs, nothing. It's important to get this ID card back. So we started the mission not only to bring the family back in, which they are now actively involved in their dad's case, but also to get this ID card. You see that book, when I say, how does this help case progression? That's a book written by the Vietnamese, and in it, they document his Major Magnuson's shoot down. He was one of the first air-to-air shoot downs by the Vietnamese to the US, April 4th, 1965, while 79 planes hit the Thanh Hoa province, the Dragon's Jaw Bridge. We lost a lot of aircraft, a lot of men trying to take out that bridge. Major Magnuson was one of them. We knew he flew out to sea. We knew his last words were, I'm ejecting. Now we can confirm he got out of the plane. Otherwise, how would we have gotten his ID card? It was proffered at one point that the ID card floated around the Gulf of Tonkin, and it was found. Well, could have happened, except for it would have had to float around with the card that was underneath it, which is the Geneva Convention card. Those were carried in the wallet or carried in the pocket. So somebody had Major Magnuson's remains, and they removed that ID card. Further examination of the museums, we went into the Ho Chi Minh Trail Museum, where we found the ID card of Sergeant First Class John Robert Adams, known as Bob. That poster there at the end is all about him. He's one of your aviation losses. You see me holding the card there and examining the card, photographing the card. So the opportunity came up in May of this year to meet with the Deputy Foreign Minister of Vietnam when he was in town for tariff talks. And we brought up these items and others to him and said we would like them back. And to show you good faith, here's a captured battle flag. That's the same flag you saw in one of the earlier pictures that was turned over to us. And the binder there contains the location of 22 of your war dead, 22 Viet Cong soldiers that were killed by an Australian infantry or LRP team. Here's where they are. Here's where they've been. Our partner organization, Healing Through History, found them, turned them over to us, and we were able to turn them over to the Vietnamese. We worked this from May through June. Director McCaig was going to be in Vietnam, and all of the information that we had was that the artifacts were going to be turned over to Director McCaig on behalf of the Vietnamese people to return to the families. And then right before the annual government briefing, a news article came out in the Washington Times, and that derailed the efforts. So, how do we get it back on track? On the 25th of August this year, which is the anniversary date of my wife's father going missing, 58 years, we went to the Vietnamese embassy in Washington, D.C., and we didn't speak to the ambassador. Of the last couple of years, we have had handshakes with presidents, chairmen of the Joint Chiefs, foreign officials, congressmen, senators, all kinds of people you can think of. This guy on the far right, standing next to me, is the guy who put everything in motion to make what you're going to see happen next. He's not the ambassador, but he's one of the people that can get things done. And sometimes that's the people you need to go to. And in this case here, then you see the ambassador in the next photograph. What it led to was meeting the president of Vietnam on September the 22nd in New York City when he was in town to address the United Nations. We had originally invited the Vietnamese to come to our family and member meeting in November in Virginia Beach to do an artifact exchange. And the Vietnamese said, hey, would you like to do it earlier? And we said, absolutely, let's make this happen. So we flew families in to Washington, D.C. We took a train ride up to New York City. And there you see the family of Major Magnuson on the far left, Lori, the daughter, getting her dad's ID and Geneva Convention card back. Our group, which included our president, Cindy Stonebreaker Reed, Jeannie, and Mandy Robbins. Mandy's the sister of Bob Adams. That's why she's here today. Additional artifacts that we returned to Vietnam came from a Green Beret, not part of your organization. I think he was at one time, but he's had some health issues. He wanted to remain anonymous, and he donated multiple artifacts to us. And we took them as a set, because the Vietnamese gave us 5 things. We gave them 5 things back. We got 3 artifacts related to American MIAs, and we got 2 artifacts from 2 soldiers that were killed in action that were displayed in their museums. So the DPA received those. The families directly received the items back from the Vietnamese, with the Vietnamese president standing there watching. The Vietnam Wartime Accounting Initiative, this is, we just announced this. We were asked to come up and meet with the DoD regarding our efforts, our people-to-people exchanges, our veteran-to-veteran exchanges, and we were awarded a grant from the Department of Defense for $550,000, which we will be using for this following year to take trips to Vietnam, to advance the mission, to bring Vietnamese to the U.S., to advance the mission, to work on our Operation HART program and exchange more artifacts to get answers in some form or fashion for a family that knows nothing or has nothing of their loved one. And finally, to launch Project SITREPE, which stands for the Strategic Imagery Tactical Reconnaissance Engagement Platforms. This is another program that we worked with our partners at Healing Through History. And this is a program that's been floated around for several years. However, it was never funded. Now we're going to be able to fund it. And what this is going to do is give us the option to look at wartime imagery from different types of reconnaissance platforms, including drones, satellites, RA-3B Sky Warriors, the kind of plane my wife's dad flew, Phantoms, you name it. If they flew in Vietnam and took pictures, that film is preserved. And we're going to be getting it. And we're going to be looking at it. And we're going to be looking for downed aircraft. We're going to be looking for things that we can turn over to DPAA to help case advancement. We're going to be looking for mass graves. We're going to be looking for all kinds of things in that imagery. And the best part, we're going to be training the families of missing service members to help us with that mission. So we will be bringing them to DC to work in the National Archives to learn how to get this imagery and help work not only their case, but other cases as well. We have Veterans Week coming up in Virginia Beach. The whole week, we're bringing the moving wall in. We have displays of vehicles. We're going to have the North Carolina Vietnam Helicopter Pilots Association there with Huey Gunship and a Huey Slick and a Loach. And the idea is to promote the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War and to honor our nation's prisoners of war and those still missing in action. So we have a whole week dedicated to that in Virginia Beach. So if you're near there, want to come up for the day, it's at the Virginia Beach Convention Center. We'll have the moving wall inside of the convention center, so weather's not going to be an option. And if anybody would like to come out and participate in the parade, come on, you can march with us. You see the Flame of Hope. In the 1970s, the Flame of Hope was created outside of Oceana Naval Air Station. It was supposed to be a constant reminder of our missing. However, over the years, it has fallen into disrepair. The gas lines broke. They had a glass flame on top of it at one point. Well, over the last 3 months, Mission POWMIA, the Association of Naval Aviators, and the Virginia Patriot Guard, we've raised $15,000. We've restored the flame. It's relit, and we've cleaned up the entire park. And during our Veterans Week event, we will be taking the MIA families that are coming into town out there for a ceremonial relighting of the flame. So awareness is huge. Awareness is huge. There are a lot of folks that today don't know what that flag means flying over the post office. We can't rest with this mission. Mandy, can you come up for a second? This is Mandy Robbins, sister of Bob Adams. She's holding her brother's picture there. We brought Mandy because she has something to say to you all. And this is why she has something to say to you. This is a statement from 18 November 1967. When we learned that Specialist Adams was still at the crash, a Special Forces NCO volunteered to go down on a rope at the crash site to try to find him. As they approached and the NCO was standing in the door, the helicopter took fire. They didn't see anybody visibly around the helicopter, and they left. But Mandy has something to say to all you Green Berets.
I've never walked a minute in your boots, but I've been a MIA sister since I was 11. And with all my heart, I love each and every one of you. I respect each and every one of you. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, for everything, every minute that you spent in that awful war and the awful things that you had to endure. And especially, I want to thank you. Maybe some of you even served with my brother. But I just want to thank you. There's no other words that I can even think of. you have just touched my heart. And I will never forget any of you. Some of you I've met. I have a book with me with photos of my brother that were sent back with all his belongings. And I would love for each of you to be able to sign that if you would while you're here. Thank you again.
That closes us out. We hope our presentation's been meaningful to you, understand what we do, and that we're not going to stop. Alpha Mike, keep the mission moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Mandy. I know that had to be very difficult. Our next group of speakers, in fact, I actually had forgot one of our committee members, Nick Nichols. I apologize, Nick. You were hiding behind Dave. Our next group, and I'd like to kind of touch base on, we had to do Zoom, and we've been working very hard with DPAA Hawaii, with the new DDO who you'll meet, trying to put this together. It was a quick thing, as I mentioned earlier, and very difficult to try to get everybody going. As Ann addressed that the shutdown severely affected the presentations that we were going to have. Anybody who worked for the government was not allowed to even get on their computers. The only people that could do it would be contract, people who work contract for the government and the military. So that's what you will see. And they have stepped up and worked with us to try to put this together. So I very much appreciate what DPAA and the others, and of course, the folks I mentioned earlier, have done to try to put this program together so we could service and inform you what's going on. That's what this thing was, what it's all about. So I'm going to turn it over to Captain Bodner, the new DDO at DPAA Hawaii, and they will come up on the screen, and they will be able to see the audience and the part of the presentation that they're taking. We hope. We've talked about this quite a bit back and forth. We've done a lot of practices, but you know how that goes. There's always a glitch here or there. So I want to turn it over to Captain Bodner.
All right. Aloha, good morning. Thank you, David. And it's really a pleasure to be here virtually with you all. Man, following after Dave and Mandy just now, it's a tough road here. But I'll just get right into it. I've got a whole team assembled, and we're really thankful to join you. My name is Megan Bodner. I am the Deputy Director for Operations at the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. I'm joined here today with Sergeant Major Lauren Flores, Master Sergeant Ben Siebert, and one of our contract anthropologists, Ms. Stephanie Hartley. We really do wish that we could be here with you today, but as David has explained, due to the government shutdown, we're just unable to travel and have to join you virtually. We also don't have exactly the composition that we originally intended, as all of our civilian employees are furloughed, but we're making do with our active duty service members and our contractor anthropologists. We are happy to share with you the information in a virtual environment, and I think that we'll be able to answer most of the things that you might have on your minds. The way that I would like to approach this presentation is with the goal to provide you the most updated information. First, by briefly introducing our panel, then I will share some additional information. I'm going to pass the mic then to the other panelists, and then we will be available to take some questions as per your agenda. So without further ado, let's get started. We're joining you today from Hawaii, our DPA facility at the Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam. I understand that you already have our bios, so I will keep introductions short. I've been the DDO for about 4 months. I'm a career surface warfare officer with a nuclear power subspecialty, So before coming to DPA, my previous sea tours were as reactor officer on the USS Nimitz. And before that, I had command of a guided missile destroyer, the USS Ridley, home ported in Everett, Washington. I'm joined here by Sergeant Major Flores. She is DPA's Senior Enlisted Advisor, who is a mortuary affairs specialist, and she's already in her third tour here at DPAA, having previously served as a team sergeant in the Worldwide Operations Center, NCOIC. I also have Master Sergeant Ben Siebert. He is our Expeditionary Support Director at NCOIC and the Army's Senior Enlisted Leader. He's been here since July of 2023. He's a Special Forces Team Sergeant who's deployed numerous times to Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. And incidentally, he has orders to leave us next year to run the J3 at SOCPAC. So he'll be back in it. Lastly, I have Ms. Stephanie Harley, a forensic anthropologist contractor with SNA International in support of the DPA mission. She has been with the agency since 2021 and is currently on both our Vietnam War Identification Project and our Korean War Identification Project. So first of all, I'd like to thank the Special Operations Association and the Special Forces Association, specifically David Gordon, the chair of the committee, for inviting us to speak today. I know I speak for Director McKeag and the entire agency when I say that we greatly value the relationship and support that we share with both organizations in fulfilling our sacred obligation to the families of our missing and your comrades in arms. I am aware that this is a special occasion, right? The first time the Special Operations Association and the Special Forces Association have hosted concurrent reunions, so it truly is an honor to be able to speak to you, albeit virtually, for this historic event. David was kind enough to provide me a recommended list of topics, so I'm going to try to stick to those topics and jump right in. So, because this is a joint reunion, as I understand it, there are probably or possibly a lot of folks in the room who don't know much about DPAA, so I will start by just giving you a brief summary. We are a defense agency of about 800 personnel overall, a mix of government civilians, active duty military, and contractors, with the mission to fulfill our nation's promise to recover our missing service members from conflicts from World War II, Vietnam, Korea, Cold War, and present day. Our headquarters, where the director is located, is in DC, but we have 2 world-class forensic laboratories, one here in Hawaii and one in Offutt, Nebraska, and 4 detachments that support field work globally. Now, I'd like to get into a little bit more discussion about that field work, specifically for 2025's operations and activities. Slide 2, please. Can you keep clicking through? That's interesting. There you go. Okay, let me make sure that that's the complete slide. Yeah, there's one more click. There we go. Okay, so a dramatic entry to the slide. All right, so although my focus today is specifically on the Vietnam War, and that's going to be what I talk about the most, I do want to mention that this year, fiscal year 2025, was a record-setting year for us. We had the most identifications in the history of this mission, with 231 individual identifications made. 8 of those, as you can see in the top bullet, are from the Vietnam conflict. Now, there were many reasons for this banner year, including some of technological innovations in the lab that we put into place, and the fact that the last 2 years of budget increases led to increased field activities and more sessions to the lab. But honestly, many of the contributors are many years in the making. Identifications are just the last step in what is often a multi-year process that begins with research and that leads to investigations and the recovery of the remains into the lab for then however long the lab takes for processing, which, depending on what the condition of the remains is, it could take a while. So I can tell you that in addition to the identifications we made this year, we accomplished much of the work for future identifications as well in 2025. In fact, specifically for countries applicable to the Vietnam War, in 2025 we conducted the most robust JFA, which is Joint Field Activity schedule we have had in over 5 years. We conducted 14 recovery missions, which included 1 DPAA underwater recovery mission and 11 investigation missions, which included 1 partner underwater investigation in Vietnam, 11 recovery missions and 2 investigation missions in Laos, and 1 recovery and 1 investigation mission, both partner missions in Cambodia. These are the activities that resulted in the 8 identifications, 5 from Laos and 3 from Vietnam. The personnel that you see there are 4 personnel who were identified specifically from one REFNO 2052, which was actually on the slide on the first slide that we had. That was a picture from 2052. All right. We were fortunate in 2025 to receive great support from the 46 host nations we operate in globally, and Southeast Asia was no exception. In fact, we maintain a regular battle rhythm of engagements with our Southeast Asian host nations. Director McKeag has cultivated relationships with several senior officials from Vietnam officials over the years, both of those located in Vietnam and also in Washington. The same is true for the Cambodians as well as the Lao. He has regular touch points with the Vietnamese ambassador in the US and travels every 1 to 2 years to meet with government and host nation officials. This summer, actually, as you can see on the screen, he traveled with a small delegation to the region and conducted roughly 40 individual engagements throughout Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, meeting with US Embassy and host nation officials. The next bullet talks about tech talks. We do host annual technical talks with each of the 3 primary Vietnam War host nations, which, for those of you who are unfamiliar, serve as a platform to discuss upcoming fiscal year operations, as well as any additional items for addressing improvements to the mission and increasing our collaboration. Next year, I am scheduled to lead those tech talks, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Now I'd like to touch briefly on the specifics for the 3 primary countries of interest for the Vietnam War. First, I'll start with Vietnam. 2025, as we've already touched on, marks not only the 50th anniversary on the end of the Vietnam War and the 30th anniversary of normalized diplomatic relations, but the 40th anniversary of the first U.S. recovery mission in Vietnam. We appreciate the cooperation and support of the Vietnamese government and people since 1985 to search for and recover remains of American missing from the Vietnam War and continue to have a solid relationship with the Vietnamese in these efforts. We have had great success in Vietnam utilizing partners for specific missions such as remote sensing and diving operations in the Gulf of Tonkin. And next year, we plan to increase efforts by utilizing 2 partners on separate sites. Our partners' efforts in Vietnam have directly led to the identification of 1 service member in the short time that we've been using them to conduct operations. Another area that we've seen improvement in recent years when working with the Vietnamese is in our access to Vietnamese archives. This is in part with thanks to the new law around transparency of archives and records that recently took effect in Vietnam. Artifacts provide critical information to advance cases, as Dave has just discussed, and most importantly, help to provide answers to family members. Artifacts may be the only tangible thing a family member receives, so it's important that we vigorously pursue the return of artifacts, as you've already heard Dave discuss. During the director's trip to Vietnam this summer, he met with the directors of the archives in Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi, as well as the Director General overseeing all archives in Vietnam. He asked specifically to increase access for our researchers, and if we could send our expert researcher back to their archives, but for a longer period of time. Not only did the Vietnamese agree, but the very next day, they started sending out emails to put this plan in motion and make it happen. We're also discussing ways for increased, more efficient collaboration with the archives. So all indicators that the archival access is improving. Second, Cambodia. We appreciate the cooperation and robust support of the Cambodian government and people toward our mission and consider their cooperation to be the gold standard. We've used partners to conduct investigative and recovery field activities in Cambodia since 2021. Over the last 4 years, there have been 7 partner missions and 7 partner investigations or pre-deployment site surveys, PDSSs, in 5 locations. The Cambodians have been greatly supportive of all of our use of partners in our operations, just as they are with our DPAA teams. We've been working closely with their committee over the past years on something that is called the Cambodian Closure Initiative, or CCI, to strategically and optimally address the last remaining cases in the country in an accomplishable timeline. These numbers remaining in Cambodia are small, but all very individually challenging. But I anticipate CCI efforts should be helpful in this regard. Third, Laos. Just as with Vietnam, 2025 marks a milestone anniversary in Laos, and we're grateful for the 40 years of ongoing support from the Lao government, which highlights the strength of our partnership and our team's dedication to this vital humanitarian issue despite recent challenges. I can offer some examples of the great coordination we're seeing with Laos. While meeting with the Lao this summer, the director asked for increased access to Lao veterans and additional Lao personnel on the Lao team to increase our operations efficiency. The Veterans Federation in Laos also asked for a list of provinces where we would want to interview witnesses and offered to help facilitate. You may be aware that our Detachment 3, which is one of the detachments I talked about earlier in our global detachment, my discussion on where our locations are, is in the process of relocating our U.S. personnel to Thailand. To provide you a little bit of history here, for 40 years now, we've been operating in Laos without the immunities that are normally afforded to other embassy staff. With increased vehicular traffic and infrastructure development, the risks to U.S. personnel assigned to the detachment has increased exponentially in recent years. Unfortunately, despite efforts to negotiate with the Lao government for over a year, we could not come to a mutually agreeable solution to resolve the situation. So in an effort to provide the same diplomatic protections afforded to other U.S. personnel serving abroad, it was necessary to decide to relocate our permanently assigned U.S. personnel and their families. In March, DPA officially informed the Lao government of the impending transition. But to be clear, DPA is not closing the detachment in Laos. We are relocating the 5 U.S. personnel and their families from Laos by the end of 2026 in a phased approach, while our 9 dedicated Lao national employees remain at the det in Vientiane. This will in no way impact our pace of operations. The U.S. personnel will frequently return to Laos in a temporary duty status to support operations during the JFAs. The Lao government asked us to separate the accreditation issue from JFAs, and we have done that. And this move affords the necessary level of protection for our people while still maintaining our strong op tempo in Laos. Lastly, I would like to close with letting you know that we are awaiting budget decisions and working to determine the impacts or what to be expected from cuts to our original planned budget. With the information that we were provided for planning with the expected fiscal year 26 budget, we anticipated seeing an overall reduction of 10.5% as part of the fiscal reductions Department of War wide. Field operations would take a proportionally larger cut than the rest of the agency due to the large number of fixed costs in the agency's budget. The ultimate impact would be a reduction in the number of both recovery and investigative teams. We plan to reduce the investigative teams more because we have a robust excavation list in place already. So there is still plenty of work ready to go in this time of fiscal restraint. And as a result, we have activities planned in Vietnam and Laos in all 4 quarters. The screen shows you actually, I think it's the next, it was on the previous slide. Can you go back? Oh, not easily. Okay. Oh no, I asked for too much. Okay. The second slide had the numbers for the master excavation list. We can get that up for you soon. Yeah, current status of numbers and manning when that comes up. There we go. So to give you an example, so we do have a robust excavation list in place already, right? You can see 319 on the master excavation list. 203 of those are in the Indo-Pacific and 114 for the Vietnam War alone, right? So our goal is to conduct the most robust operational schedule possible within the budget that we're given and maintain Vietnam as our operating priority. So as the budget is worked out in the near future, then we'll be able to put those principles into effect. I'd like to turn it now over to Sergeant Major Flores and the rest of the panel. I look forward to taking any questions you might have after her presentation. Thank you for your service, for your continued interest in our mission, and taking the time to be here with us today. Good luck. It is your turn. You don't have any slides, so it should go better.
Good morning, everyone. As Captain Bodner stated, my name is Sergeant Major Flores. I am a career graves registration, mortuary affairs, fatality management specialist, whatever the nomenclature of my MOS has been over the years. I've spent the entirety of my time in the Army recovering and returning home America's sons and daughters from present and past battlefields. Also, like Captain Bodner stated, I have spent a lot of time in Iraq and at every point in the current mortuary affairs enterprise, but this is my third time assigned to this organization. So I am not the Sergeant Major that hasn't put a shovel in the ground in Southeast Asia. Staff Sergeant Shaw, that was me, led teams to 6 recovery missions in Vietnam, 3 in Laos, and singular missions to Cambodia, Korea, and Germany. Sergeant First Class Flores, that's also me, DPAA's Worldwide Operations Center as we transitioned from the joint POW MIA County Command to our current permutation of the agency. That being said, I'm very proud to lead this organization as Kelly McKegg's advisor through this record-setting year of identifications. I've seen this organization transform over the years into a fully transparent front runner in cutting-edge technology that empowers competent and passionate leadership across directorates to fulfill our nation's promise. It is truly a process to behold when you are in it. There are many perceptions of DPAA across the spectrum from different people with different needs and different personas, but I have personally witnessed its transformation from the ground of the recovery team sergeant to the top of the organization. So I can meaningfully tell you that fulfilling our nation's promise has never been more promising. From our deployment of advanced DNA sequencing to our employment of partners that adhere to the stringent scientific and diplomatic standards that lead to identifications that Gold Star families deserve, to significant advancements in different avenues of cooperation and diplomacy with both longstanding and new country partners. We've innovated beyond innovation. The passage of time has not diminished the urgency of DPAA's mission. That mission is about the family who receives that call after decades of wandering, that community that welcomes home their hero, and that veteran who finally puts their friend to rest, and the nation that keeps its word. That's the crux of our mission. It is an honor to represent this organization and work alongside such competent and passionate human beings. Among these highly competent and passionate human beings is Stephanie Hartley. She's here to my right. Stephanie will present our case study on the investigations, recoveries, and identifications of service members from the Battle of Lang Bay. Was that a good introduction for you? That was all I did. So over to you, Stephanie.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. As she said, my name is Stephanie Hartley. I'm a forensic anthropology contractor. So my job, I predominantly do skeletal work, so the lab side of things, which you'll see kind of throughout this presentation, but I've also done some field work as well. One thing about me is I love puzzles, and kind of the good thing about that is that it is what science is all about. It's trying to figure out the puzzle, trying to figure out that question, and really putting all of our effort in order to see that bigger picture. It really is an honor to be here today to speak to you all. As you kind of heard throughout, our mission directly relates to yours in that we try to commemorate fittingly the memory of those who have served and to all those who are still unaccounted for. A little bit of background on why I joined the mission. My great-grandfather served in the Army in World War II. He fought in the Battle of Guadalcanal as well as the Leyte campaign. And while he barely discussed his time in the war with his daughter or my grandmother, he never hesitated to show off these knives, so like those artifacts that you are talking about that he got from a local Filipino man that were like hand carved that kind of depicted the war, which was really cool and was his prized possession that he never stopped to brag that it only cost him a pack of cigarettes. This mission has really given me the opportunity to be a part of a team that gets to give stories like this back to their loved ones, who may be kind of like my grandmother, were kept in the dark about what occurred, where they served, or just provide some insight into who they were as a person. I am giving this presentation on behalf of Dr. Nicolette Parr, the Vietnam War Project Identification Lead, as she could not be here today. But I do want to note that she did create all of these slides, and I know I talked to her yesterday and she was saying that she really wanted to be here with y'all, and she talked very highly of all of you. So as Captain Bonner had said, y'all kind of understand a little bit of what the DPAA does, but one thing I thought that you might not know is that it all kind of started with the hard work and dedication of a group of military wives whose husbands were missing from the Vietnam War and who wanted answers. Without them, the agency as we know it today would not be here in this capacity, which I think just kind of shows you how the power of a few can really move the masses. And as Captain Bonner said, this last fiscal year, we accounted for 231 lost servicemen. That's 231 families who now have answers, and 231 servicemen who are now home. So I just want to take a moment of silence for them, their families, and all of those that we're still searching for, and all of y'all's sacrifices. Okay, slide please. So this is kind of just an overview slide of what I'll be talking about today. You'll hopefully not get too tired of hearing my voice, but we'll go from field operations to lab operations and that identification process. One thing to note is while I will be going, step by step, this really is a feedback loop. So the field operations inform the lab and identification process informs future field operations. And so everything that goes into a case has to have multiple lines of evidence, which you'll hear me say quite a bit throughout this presentation. I do want to give a warning that there will be human remains seen throughout this presentation. I'll try to do my best to give a warning before that slide itself, but for the case that I'm presenting, none of the remains are directly associated to that case, because I know there are potentially people in the audience that knew these gentlemen. So I would like to kind of give a moment for preparation, to see those types of things, and if you would not, to give you a moment to step out. Okay, next slide, please. So what are field operations, right? Basically, that's everything that happens in the dirt, on the site, and in prep and planning for that site excavation. And that can include witness statements, interviews, and everything of the like. Every field operation is comprised of a multidisciplinary team that is led by a member of the scientific staff, at least for all things science and site related, and then supported by the military services to orchestrate all of the critical mission functions, such as team leaders that lead basically everything else. They lead the people and everything that happens outside of the actual, you dig in the dirt, right? So outside of that investigation of the site itself. We also have team sergeants and augmented specialty personnel that can include things like a medic, linguist, EOD techs, life support, but each mission is going to have kind of a different composition of a team and different specialties that are needed. So for a case, say, like Pupati, which I know some of you might know, it's a special ops site on the side of a mountain, you might need a mountaineer to make sure that all of the people on the site are safe. But if you're maybe at a rice paddy in Southeast Asia, you wouldn't necessarily need a mountaineer. And so each team is comprised specifically for that field site. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to walk you through a particular case. And just kind of throughout this whole presentation, I want you to be an active participant. I want this to not just be me lecturing at you, but I want you to kind of listen to what I'm saying, see what you see on the slides. What clues do you see? What clues do you hear? How would you potentially move forward with this case? And try to remember that feedback loop that I was talking about. Next slide, please. So the site that I'm going to talk about today was either excavated by the DPAA or by the host nation and then unilaterally turned over throughout the 80s and 90s. But it really kind of came back into play in 2003 when we got a new witness statement. One thing about the excavations in the 80s and 90s, science is ever progressing. Science wasn't necessarily as good then as it is now. And so no IDs had been made from these excavations at that time. But the invention of new technologies such as DNA testing can really help move those cases forward because we're always trying to review older cases to see if any new technologies can help with those past limitations. So in 2003, we got a witness statement that kind of sparked new discoveries for this site. The witness said he and his nephew were scavenging for scrap metal in a banana orchard, and they noticed like a slight depression in the ground with the metal pole sticking out of it, and they wanted that metal. But they couldn't just pull the pole out because it was in kind of deep, so they started to dig. They dug down to about the depth of the witness's neck and saw military boots with bones inside, an ID tag, a blanket, a watch, and even a claw-style charm on one of the boot straps. After digging out the bunker, the witness stated that there were basically two bodies lying adjacent to one another, and there was an ID tag around the neck of one of the bodies, and a watch was between the two bodies. Next slide, please. A little bit of background for this incident, though. The Battle of Lin Bay occurred in February of 1968 and involved the loss of multiple U.S. Special Forces soldiers, as well as 3 POWs that were released during Operation Homecoming. They were manning an observation post on the western perimeter of the Special Forces camp in Lin Bay when the North Vietnamese launched an attack on the camp. Based on historical research and survivor accounts, these individuals were not necessarily all in the same location when they were lost, and so that's one of those things to kind of keep in mind, that this is a relatively large site to try to excavate. So while the incident overall includes multiple losses, I'm going to first focus on 2 in particular, then Sergeant First Class Hannah and Lindewald. Hannah and Lindewald were manning a mobile strike force observation post about 700 meters north of that tactical operations center. You'll see kind of that red arrow on the slide. Historical and survivor accounts indicate that Lindewald was injured and Hannah carried him to a bunker to try to treat his wounds. We even have records of Hannah radioing to the control tower saying, "I think I have VC below me. We've got tanks inside our wire. I said tanks inside our wire. We need help, aid. Lindewald's hit in the gut, and 4 tanks are firing point blank, and a couple of platoon doggies are eating our lunch. You copy?" But shortly after this, the bunker was destroyed by an enemy tank, and neither were seen again. Of note, the 1980s and 90s excavations and unilateral turnovers did not focus on this area of the old camp, and so in 2003 and 2004, which I'll talk about in a second, were the first times excavations of this area had occurred. Next slide. After further research and mapping, plus that eyewitness statement, the team located a bunker. At first look at the bunker, they realized that there was newly disturbed soil and backfill dirt in the hole, which lined up to what the witness had said after they did their excavation. The left image is what the bunker looked like prior to excavation. That scaffolding that you see was built for the purpose of the excavation, though. The initial recovery found possible human remains, a military ID card, and the pair of boots. And then this right image on the slide is after the excavation occurred. The team recovered more ammunition, rations, a military ID card, and other electronic equipment that was relevant to that incident era. This helps kind of prove to the team that potentially they're in the right spot, and that this could indeed be the bunker that we were thinking of. Now, sadly, this mission had to stop early because there was an incoming typhoon. So while you can try to control for just about everything in the mission, you can't really control for the weather. But good news with this is the ID card that they had found was that of Sergeant First Class Lindewald, and the claw charm that I was talking about that was on the boot, we have a photograph from 1968 of him wearing a similar charm. So this is good evidence towards this being the bunker that they were last seen in. Next slide, please. But not to worry, we did come back the following year to continue excavations since we didn't reach sterile soil in 2003. And by sterile soil, it basically just means that there's no more incident-related material being found. These are just some photographs of what that excavation process looks like. The left image is one of the excavation bunker itself, so like inside that unit, and the right is the screening station. So basically, during an excavation, all of the dirt that gets removed from a unit gets put inside one of those buckets that you see on the slide, and then brought to a screening station to be screened through 1/4-inch mesh. And anything that does not go through that mesh gets reviewed by the search and recovery expert, so that scientist that is there on site. Now this could be anything from sticks and rocks to bone and teeth and material evidence. You name it, we look at it. Next slide, please. This is the excavation map, or the left side of the screen is the excavation map from what the team dug in 2004. You see all of that purple? That's everywhere they dug. The image on the right shows you kind of a real-time view of what that map is depicting. So the red arrow is the bunker itself, which correlates to that green portion on the map. I hope this kind of gives you some type of spatial awareness of where the bunker is in relation to what all was excavated in that time frame. Now, inside the purple area, you'll see little stars and circles, little red dots. Might be a little hard to see on the slide, but these indicate all the areas where either bone or material evidence was found. You can see there's lots of those little red dots, right? So lots of significant findings, which is awesome. So remember how I was explaining try to go to sterile soil? So this is also in relation to horizontal space, not just vertical. So while we want to dig down deep enough into any given unit to hit sterile soil, we also want to excavate left, right, north, south, east, west, right? And so we're not getting any more of that incident-related items because we don't want to miss a thing. During this excavation, the team found more bone, as I stated earlier, but also found a dental appliance, or denture, as well as another ID card. So from this one area, we found a lot of good evidence to go off of, but the analysis of this evidence happens into the lab, so I'll kind of come back to that later. At the time of the excavation, though, the team was able to determine that they found a minimum of 2 individuals, based on the duplication of skeletal elements. Basically, they found 2 different jaw bones, so they knew they had at least 2 people. Now, this doesn't mean that it's only 2, but at least 2. With the remains of material evidence that were turned over by that witness and what the team was able to excavate and find, they were able to find at least 2 people, 2 different identification medias, an ID tag and a card, and plenty of other incident-related material. So that's what I consider a jackpot. But I'll talk about the lab side of that material in a little bit. But based on the findings of what the team found in the lab, we decided to go a different route for the next excavation, as just a little hint. Next slide, please. A few years later, after meticulous planning, the team returned to the incident location in 2007. At that time, the Vietnamese government had let us know that construction was to begin in that region, and so we wanted to get out there as soon as possible so that nothing was lost. Remember how I said that the campsite was a large one? So that the area that we went back to in 2007 was the same area that the 80s and 90s excavations were done, but a different location than the bunker that I just talked about from 2003 and 2004. This time, the team went out to site with the Sergeant Major Thompson, who was there and survived the Battle of Lang Bay. He helped the team to identify camp structures and helped to locate the escape and evasion route leading from the new camp across what is now Highway 9. Based on his assistance, the team determined areas of interest to excavate and completed full-scale search and recovery excavations of all of those relevant structures and features. Essentially meaning kind of what they did for that 2004 excavation, that purple map, they did that for every area of interest determined by Sergeant Major Thompson. Now, how they determined what areas of interest were was based off of historical accounts of the other unaccounted for in this region at the time: Moreland, Phillips, and Holt. Moreland was last seen in the tactical operation tower. Holt was manning a rifle near a mortar pit where he depleted his ammunition and was last seen running towards an ammunition bunker. And Phillips was last seen near the team house when he was injured and potentially was trying to fight his way towards that escape and evasion route. Next slide, please. With the aid of the incident and post-incident photographs, Sergeant Major Thompson was able to help ID many significant features and camp structures. Here's kind of a map that was created of what he helped to identify. So he helped confirm the location of that tactical operations center, which was originally excavated in the 90s. And so we knew that we did excavate the correct location. He identified multiple different concrete bunkers across the camp and identified what he believed to either be the foundation of the team house or potentially the latrine that was next to that team house, and pointed out the escape and evasion route across Highway 9. Next slide, please. So these next two slides are really just to kind of show you those post-conflict photos that he was able to use and able to help identify those different features and sites. These were also used to overlay to the map you just saw in order to help with those excavations. You can see some tanks, the observation post, and the gallon drums for weapons in this image. Next slide, please. This slide is the new Lengmai camp structures that he could ID. Most importantly, based on historical accounts here, would be that ammunition bunker, the tactical operations center, and other mortar pits and bunkers, as well as the escape and evasion route. However, these are obviously immediate post-conflict images, so this isn't really what the site looked like at the time of excavation. It was closer to, next slide, something like this, which doesn't quite look the same, right? So that road you're looking at in this image is Highway 9. The road was constructed between 2000 and 2004 and cuts basically across the entire western portion of the new campsite. That blue roof building that you kind of see in the left side of the image, that was built on top of that mortar pit that was previously excavated in 1995. So where the people are at the bottom of the hill, you can kind of see they're itty bitty there. They're on the concrete foundation of what Sergeant Major Thompson identified to either be the team house or associated latrine. Now, unfortunately, most of the area that was likely associated with some of the missing personnel on the west side of the camp had been quarried off in previous years to construct that road. So all of the features in that area were destroyed. Next slide. Because of the quarrying, the team tried to focus on areas that maybe provided refuge for the soldiers during this battle. They selected 4 types of areas to excavate. That tactical operations center, different bunkers to include the ammunition bunker, the team house and latrine, and the escape and evasion route. Now, all excavations start with metal detection for explosive ordnances. You kind of have to keep the team safe. You don't want to add any more names to that recovery list. And definitely probably the one person on your team that you want to keep the happiest. And then after the site is clean and clear of any explosive ordnance, they clear the vegetation, which helps kind of see what the ground surface truly looks like. And as an archaeologist, you might be able to see if there's any different features to the soil. And then they place excavation grids over areas of interest. So that left image on the slide, you can see kind of an orange post in the ground. That'd be essentially one corner of what would be an excavation unit. All points, including and such as that orange stake, are mapped using a total station, which basically helps to coordinate different location points and units and other material found in relation to one another. We also use GPS coordinates so that we can use not just in relation to one another, but where they are in the broader spectrum of the world. All of this helps to create maps like that 2004 map with all the purple that you saw on the previous slide. Next, please. Okay, so this is that tactical operations center location. Remember how I said there was one unaccounted for at the time, Moreland, who was last seen in the tactical operations center. This is why this was an area of interest. This portion of the site was previously excavated in the 90s, but with new advancing technologies, the team wanted to make sure that nothing was missed with all these updated scientific protocols. The team excavated 4x4 meter units over the entire area that was believed to contain the remnants of this tactical operations center. This re-excavation yielded no evidence of possible human remains or personal effects, and very few battle-related items, which basically just indicates that the previous team did a really good job of excavating of what had survived at the center. Because of this region of the site was closed for future excavations because we knew we had gotten everything we could. Next slide, please. This is one of those bunkers that they tried to excavate, or that they did excavate. And the next few slides kind of just showcase the various bunkers that were excavated and kind of where they are in relation to each other using the map that we've seen previously. For this bunker, we actually had pre-incident photos of what it looked like, which would be that left image you see on the slide, and then what it looked like at the time of the 2007 excavation, that right image. It's a bit different, I know. It takes a really trained eye to be able to see where are we supposed to excavate, what is this location now, what do we see now, right? In this bunker, the team found fragments of ponchos, some communication wires, a flak jacket that had inserts, like one of those flak jacket inserts that had shrapnel holes inside of it, and other incident-related material, but no human remains. Next slide, please. This bunker, Bunker A, was excavated based off of a different witness statement that witness had said about 6 years prior, so about 2001, he was clearing land to plant ginger and found human remains and material evidence. He said that he had reburied the bones on the surface and covered them with rocks near what was believed to be Bunker A, which is why we chose to excavate that area. However, after the excavation, there were no significant findings that were located. And while I know this may seem disappointing to not find anything significant, even a no is a good answer to have. These types of no's kind of help inform future excavations and recoveries and planning. No's are just as important as yeses for what we are to do next. Next slide, please. The next bunker that was excavated was that ammunition or supply bunker. Remember, this was supposed to be that last known location for Holt. The bunker was about 2 meters by 3 by 2 and had concrete walls that had collapsed into the actual excavation area. And so that made it really difficult to excavate this particular bunker because concrete's heavy. But don't worry, the team got it done like they always do. And unlike the last bunker, they found a lot. Next slide, please. The team found buttons and buckles and even a sardine can. I don't know if anyone here wants to eat 40-year-old sardines. No? Yeah, probably me either, it's okay. But they also found ammunition and mines and even a US helmet. But most importantly, they found possible human remains. And though not pictured on this slide, these possible human remains were transported back to the lab for further analysis. And I'll talk about that later. Next slide, please. After they finished excavating these various bunkers, they moved on to excavating the escape and evasion route that Major Thompson had pointed out. Now this route lies kind of in a deep gully, as you can kind of see on the slide, or in the photos in the slide. The aim of this excavation was to see if potentially any remains had been left alongside the bottom of the gully in the aftermath of the battle itself. A total of 256 square meters were excavated using 2 4x4 meter units. They dug to the depth around 150 centimeters below surface, and the excavation team found many different metal picket posts, barbed wire, 57 millimeter rounds, a grenade, and other bomb fragments, but no possible human remains or personal effects. So I stated there's going to be human remains on the next slide, so I just kind of wanted to preface that before saying next. After they finished excavating the escape and evasion route, they also searched various localized features based on other witness accounts that might contain human remains, and they did indeed find some. The photos on the right is the remains in situ, which is basically just kind of a fancy way to say in place, in the dirt. So I hope you can kind of see those teeth that are in the dirt there. However, slide. After they recovered the teeth, cleaned them up, the scientific expert determined that the teeth were not consistent with American dentistry. So basically the dental patterns vary based on the region of the world, and not only the type of dental work you get done, such as fillings and things like that, but also the shape of your teeth and other features to kind of help you understand big ancestral groups that they could have came from. So the team determined that these were not from an unaccounted for US servicemen, which is basically why they were there in the first place, right? And so they, next slide please. They reburied them on the side of the site in an urn by the Vietnamese officials in a little repatriation ceremony. Now, this type of repatriation happens more than just this site, obviously. We were there to recover and identify U.S. service members. So if we recover remains or get given remains in the lab and determine them not to be ours, then they get repatriated back to that host country. Now, in this case, it happened immediately, which makes time and money and everything a little bit easier. But other cases have to be analyzed in the lab first to be able to make that determination. And then if determined that way, they are repatriated back at a later date. Next slide, please. So this is just a photo of the amazing team that did all of that work in 2007. And I just want to take a moment of appreciation for all their hard work because they covered a lot of ground. One kind of cool thing that I kind of want to point out is there is kind of an honored tradition at the end of sites to pour out a shot of American whiskey for each of the fallen service members to kind of honor their sacrifice to our country, which is, I think, one really cool thing about working with the DPAA is they try to pull in a lot of these traditions from the military. Next slide, please. So similar to how we repatriate remains back to host countries, since all of these excavations are done as joint work with the host country, there's a ceremony to turn the remains over that are found during the excavation to lab custody and a different repatriation ceremony of our own. This type of ceremony is a gesture of respect between the Vietnamese government and the American government, and to honor the sacrifices of the fallen soldiers, and also to just help promote goodwill between the two nations. This ceremony is held in country, so in Vietnam, and the Vietnamese ambassador usually attends and speaks at it, which is a really cool thing to witness if you ever get the chance. After this ceremony ends, the remains and the team all return back to the US, and all remains and material evidence that were found during the excavation are accessioned to the lab for continuing analysis. Next slide, please. Which kind of leads us to that phase 2, that next phase of operations, which is lab. So I hope you're all still with me. I know I've been talking for a while and I've thrown a lot of information your way, but this is where my job really begins. This is the part that I enjoy the most. Basically, once evidence is recovered and forwarded to the lab, that's where kind of the fancy white lab coat type of science really begins. Next slide, please. So you'll see on the slide, that top left photo, that's the DPAA laboratory. That's where we're coming from you live from, right? And it's the portion of my job that I predominantly do work at. If you're ever out in Hawaii and you want a tour of the lab, come on down. This is what you'll see. And the rest of the photos are from different tours that have happened in the lab itself. That bottom right photo you'll see, the woman in the lab coat, is Dr. Nicolette Parr. She was the one that was supposed to have given this presentation to y'all, and she really wishes she could have been here. But speaking selfishly, she's pretty amazing, and for those of you in the room that haven't gotten a chance to meet her, she's pretty special. She is also, I think I said this earlier, but just in case, I want to reiterate that she is the project lead for all of the Vietnam War identification project cases. So tracking and all identifications really go through her, and so it's pretty impressive. So the DPAA mission is to provide the fullest possible accounting for our missing personnel from past conflicts to their families and to the nation. Our commitment to this mission is really exemplified by our rigorous approach to scientific identification, meaning that every ID that is made through this lab can be defensible in a court of law. We're also an accredited laboratory, which basically just means we abide by the most rigorous standards for report writing, notes, analyses, and basically everything that would lead to that identification. Similar to field operations, the lab side is also comprised of a multidisciplinary team. We have medical examiners, anthropologists, archaeologists, odontologists or dentists, DNA techs, and so much more. I know personally, I'm just glad that it's multidisciplinary because that means I don't have to know everything. I can specialize in the thing I'm really good at, and we can all work together to make that ID. One interesting fact that you can't really see on the slide, but if you were to come to get a tour, you'll notice that throughout the lab, every lab space has an American flag and a POW flag in it, and that all the bodies are positioned to where if revenue were to play, they would rise to that American flag on the back of the room, which is just one of those traditions that we like to keep enforced. Next slide, please. So each identification is comprised of multiple analyses depending on kind of the condition of the remains and what is found through that excavation. So for example, for this case, since we found ID tags, teeth, and bone into the 2003 and 2004 excavations of that bunker, we needed material evidence, dental, and skeletal analyses done on those materials. Other cases, though, might need other lines of identification in order to actually be able to make an ID. So I'll kind of briefly go through each of these various types. So material evidence analysis is basically exactly what it sounds like. We analyze any material that would come into the lab. That can be helmets, boots, buckles, ID tags, you name it. Histological analyses are basically just, sometimes we get remains that are in the lab that are really, really fragmented or very, very small, sometimes close to the size of maybe your thumbnail. And so being able to tell if it's human or not in that sense is kind of difficult. And so, you know, if you're on a site that's in the middle of a forest, there's lots of animals that also die and their bones are also in the ground. And so we want to make sure that what we're looking at is human bone. And so histological analyses can help us determine that. Basically, histology will look at the bone microstructures under a microscope, and there's different features that can help tell you if it's consistent with animal bone or not. We can also use DNA. DNA obviously wasn't a viable method of testing back in the 80s and 90s for those original excavations, which all kind of come into play later. But we can cut a sample of bone and send it to AFTO, or our Armed Forces DNA Identification Laboratory, for DNA testing. And then that sample can be compared to a family reference sample that we have on file for the case. So in this instance, we would have needed to reach out to the families of the different service members that were missing to get a DNA family reference sample on file in order to do a comparison. We can also use isotope testing. Isotopes are basically just the different variations of chemical elements that really help to understand a person's diet. So when your parents told you that you are what you eat, you really are. Your bones will tell you that too. The best way I like to think about isotopes is like vanilla ice cream. So you can have regular vanilla or French vanilla, but it's all kind of vanilla, right? And so you can have various types of isotopes of maybe, say, carbon or nitrogen in your body in similar ways. When looking at, not yet, sorry. When looking at those isotope ratios though, so basically how much French vanilla to regular vanilla you have in your body, you can understand what types of food someone is eating. The typical American diet consists of really high corn and sugar. And I know for me, when I first heard that, I was like, I don't like corn. Why would my body look like corn? But the meat you eat eats cornmeal. So really, it is a very high corn-based diet. And our diet looks very different than the rest of the world, who eats a lot more grains and legumes and things like that. So we can use isotopes to say, hey, this person ate an American diet versus maybe this person ate not an American diet. And so they aren't a US service member. The skeletal analysis portion is exactly what it sounds like. We look at the bone that comes into the lab to determine is it human or not, determine if it's one person or not, and then to determine a biological profile for that person. Now, is it all one person aspect kind of looks at size and shape of your bone. So basically your left arm looks a lot like your right arm and so on. But we also look at articulations. So those joint surfaces, luckily your elbow is not going to fit into my elbow, and so that helps really segregate out and say this is one person versus more than one person. And then the biological profile is things like age, sex, ancestry, stature, and other individualizing characteristics, such as, did you break a bone when you were a child? Did you get shot 10 years before you died and the bone healed? Things like that. Finally, we can look at your teeth. We have some pretty amazing forensic odontologists on staff that can help tell you what teeth go together and what type of dental work was done. And then this dental work can be compared to the records of each service member possibly associated with the case, and then see if they match. Next slide. This graph, I think, does a really good job of showcasing how each line of evidence plays into one another in order to make that bigger identification. Each case is a little bit different. So if you had maybe a single-seater aircraft that was found in the jungle with the tail number and the remains of the pilot were still in the seat, you may not need as many lines of evidence to be able to say that was the pilot. But if you found, say, a bone fragment in the middle of a forest in an area where the battle, maybe 50 people died, you might need more than just, I found bones, so it's that person. Similar to how lab and field operations are feedback loops, each of these various lines of evidence are as well. So material evidence to say, So if you found material evidence and maybe you found like a captain's bar on a body, and your short list of people for that site, there's only one captain, then you know you have that individual. While if you found maybe just pilot's wings on an aircraft crash, mostly everyone on that aircraft would have had pilot's wings. And so it's not necessarily individualizing enough. It's only when various lines of evidence point to a single individual do that identification get made. The known lost location of the individual, so where they were last seen, has to match where the remains were found. Any material evidence that has to be consistent with the person. The biological profile has to match. So if the remains we say are 5'1", but the missing service member was 6'5", maybe we're not looking at the right person. And then if DNA test is tested, it has to match the family reference sample on file for that man. And then same thing with dental, it all has to match. Next slide, please. On that note, kind of let's get back to the case example, right? The items you see on the slide are the material evidence that was found in 2003 that witness had found and turned over to us. There's a special forces patch, a watch, an ID tag that if you look really closely, you might be able to tell that it says Hannah on it. I hope that name sounds familiar. And an ID card with someone's photo on it. Material evidence can be separated into different types though. So for example, all of the evidence you see on this slide are personal items that can be individualized to a particular person. And that means that they can be given back to the family along with any potential remains that we ID. Next slide, please. But we can also get material evidence that, while belonging to an individual, can't necessarily be individualized. Things like military issued boots, socks, etc. They all look kind of uniform, they're all the same. And so you can't necessarily say who it belonged to. However, say if someone wrote their name on the inside of their boots, then we have that individualizing trait, and then they would be given back to the family as well. Or say maybe there are bones in the boots, and we ID the bones, then we know that the boots also belonged to that individual. The items on this slide were also examples of what was found in 2003 and 2004. And this kind of gives you a bigger picture that they were correct for that area of excavation that they were in. Next slide, please. The last type of material evidence that we can find are kind of common use for people at the time, maybe even military, but not necessarily military issue, like cigarettes or money. This type of material evidence helps kind of give you an idea of the time period for the site you're looking at, and that are you in the correct layer of soil. So if you have a penny that says 2008 on it, maybe it's not necessarily correlated with the site, but one that has 1968 might be. And these are all examples of items that were found in that 2007 excavation. Next slide, please. So moving on to skeletal analysis. Now this is what I do in my day-to-day work. This is kind of a depiction of what was found for one of the sets of remains from that 2003 excavation. They recovered a head, arms, hips, and legs. And after the analysis, the anthropologist determined that the biological profile was that of a male, 25 to 34 years of age, who was of European ancestry, so likely white, and was about 5'7" in height, and who had trauma to the foot and left leg prior to death. And basically meaning that ante-mortem on the slide that you see, it means prior to death. And they also had trauma or perimortem trauma or at or around the time of death, trauma to the head, arms, and hip. So basically those types of traumas did not heal over. Next slide, please. Dentally, this individual had dentures of the upper and lower jaw, and that the jawbone that was found also articulated with those dentures. So basically they kind of fit together. Next slide, please. This is a depiction of what was found for the other set of remains inside that bunker. They also recovered head, arms, hips, and legs for this individual. And after the analysis, the anthropologist determined that the bioprofile was that of a male, 24 to 40 years of age, who was of African ancestry, so likely looked black, and who was about 5'9" in height, and who had trauma to the head, shoulder, arms, and legs that occurred at or around the time of death. Next slide, please. Dentally, this individual had lots of teeth with lots of fillings, and they were able to compare the x-rays of the possible individuals, so the individuals that are associated with the site, to those x-rays and see if they are any that match. And if you can see, there's kind of red arrows on the slides, and that just shows you that they found a potential match. So they had fillings in the same spot that looked the same, right? Next slide. So up note, all of these laboratory analyses that are done are in what we call the blind, meaning that the anthropologists and odontologists that created these bioprofiles didn't know anything about the case. They didn't know how many people were supposed to be there. They didn't know who it could be, nothing like that. So the identification process is handled by a separate analyst who does know who it could possibly be. And they use the analysis done in the blind and compare to the records in order to see if they can say who it possibly is. When all the evidence is gathered and we think we have a case for ID, it is presented to our medical examiner. She's the one that signs off on all of the death certificates and all of the identifications. And basically she'll make a call of, do we have enough evidence to say it is this person, defensible in court, or maybe we need to do more testing to be able to prove that it is this person. So kind of let's return to that case study. The material evidence we found in support of the Sergeant First Class Lindenwald was an identification card. It had his name, his face, his service number, and even his signature. And that's a pretty surefire way to say it's his, right? Next slide. Oh, sorry. That kind of shows you a blown up version, so you can really see his signature. Next slide. The dentures we also found very clearly stated his name on a piece of paper that was embedded in the resin for the dentures themselves. Again, really good evidence that it belonged to him. Next slide. So this is kind of just a comparison. And this is kind of what that person who knows the background would be doing. So as I had explained for individual one, that bioprofile matched him to a T. The remains were of a white male, 25 to 34, who was about 5'7" and had antemortem trauma. And Master Sergeant, posthumously promoted, Lindenwald was a white male, 29 years of age, who was 5'9" and had been shot in the foot in 1965 and had shrapnel to his left leg in 1967. So basically had healed over prior to his death. And so all of these lines of evidence pointed to one particular person and exclusion of all others, and he was ID'd in 2004. Next slide. Similarly, the material evidence found in support of then Sergeant First Class Hannah was his dog tag and an ID card. You can clearly see his name and his face on this ID card. He was also the individual on that dental x-ray slide that I showed you previously that matched the dental work for individual number 2. Next slide. The bioprofile for individual 2 also matched him to a T, which is really important. The remains were of a black male, 24 to 40, who was about 5'9", and Hannah was a black male, 35 years of age, who was 5'9". And since all of these lines of evidence pointed to one person, to the exclusion of all others, he was also ID'd in 2004. Next slide. After the identifications and the families being notified, both Lindewald and Hannah were buried per their families' respective wishes, and both are memorialized in the Courts of the Missing and the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific here in Hawaii. So if you ever come on out, you can go to the Punch Bowl Cemetery and find their names on the Courts of the Missing, which is really cool. Next slide. In conclusion, multiple lines of evidence were used in order to make these identifications and are used in all identification processes. At this time, 4 of the 5 service members from this incident have been identified, and we're still looking for 1 unaccounted for. Now, I know you may be thinking, hey lady, how'd you get 4 when you were only talking about 2 bodies, right? Well, so you remember how I said every year we are constantly reanalyzing prior remains, science is ever progressing. We're trying to always continue to do better. Well, we continue to go back to those older cases to see if any new testing could be done in order to make an ID. And those older excavations from the 80s and 90s, well, they had found bone. And so with the help of DNA technologies, we were able to match those to the remains of Moreland, the gentleman that was in the Tactical Operations Center tower, and Holt, the gentleman that was in the ammunition bunker. Now, the remains that were found in the 2007 excavation were too small for additional testing at this time, but that does not mean that we stop looking. So any new advance in technology, we can potentially try to reanalyze those remains that were found then. Next slide, please. So there is one remaining individual who is still unresolved from this incident, Phillips. Sergeant First Class Phillips was last seen in the team house of the new camp after being injured and potentially heading towards that escape and evasion route. So kind of, what are the next steps, right? I know that's probably something that's on a lot of different minds. Well, we constantly rotate investigators to Vietnam on a continuous basis to pursue leads potentially associated with missing service members. In addition, we're also constantly conducting interviews during joint forensic activities, or U.S. and Vietnamese investigators conduct oral history interviews of former and current Vietnamese government and military officials, and this type of programming is ongoing. And we're also continually going out to try to see if we can connect any new information, any new leads, and then again, potentially new DNA technologies in the future. Next slide. So I just kind of wanted to end this kind of case presentation here with some faces that you can see for IDs that have been made for the Korean War. One thing I really like to reiterate is, while we're constantly trying to do better and we're re-looking at cases, these are not just cases of bones. These are not just numbers on an Excel spreadsheet. They're someone's son, brother, and father, and each have a story to tell. And so I'm extremely grateful to be here today, to be able to give a voice to just a few of them, but there's so many more out there just like them. I think this case is a perfect example of the tenacity of the DPAA to keep their promise to the fallen. We are searching. We are trying to improve every day, and we strive to tell your story and give your family answers. I really appreciate you all listening to me talk, but really I just appreciate you listening to their story, because that's why we're all here. I thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to Master Sergeant Cedar now.
Thank you. We at DPAA really wish we could be there, but hopefully a group of Green Berets and Special Operations members can respect the fact that we adapted and found alternate means to still execute the mission. Typically every year in Vegas, in the hospitality room, we have a table to allow you and encourage you to come and share your story. Now, since we are not there, we are relying on David Gordon, Jack Cole, and Steve Thompson, who are currently there with you. Encourage you to go and reach out, tell your story, and provide information. Because really that story and that information is the intel that drives operation and assists us in continuing our ongoing mission of fulfilling the nation's promise. Thank you very much. David, we're rounds complete from Hawaii.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, all of you, for your time. And of course, being in Hawaii, they were up 6 this morning, and probably before that, putting everything together so they could be here with us, even if it was by Zoom meeting. I would like to we'd like to go into a question and answer period, which is one of the first we've been able to do during these symposiums, but that's because we start at 9:30 instead of the 10 o'clock, so we now have some time. What I'd really like to ask, though, is, and emphasize, is that we don't need stories. You have a question that they can answer. If they can't answer, they will get back to us, and we'll try to get you the answer. But please, refrain from the stories. Ask a question that refrains to something that relates to what you are trying to find out from DPAA or from family or from mission. So I will turn this now over to, I will watch, and anybody has any questions, we have a microphone here on the run, so to speak. So if somebody have a question, please go ahead and raise your hand.
Yes. When I was over in Adipu, Laos, there's a hospital that's not far from the tri-border region. And when I was there, the doctors there said they used to treat people during the war that were wounded. My question is, if those people succumbed to injuries, did they bury them there along the hospital? Has anybody looked into any of the hospitals where they may have treated these people, and possibly some of our people could be buried there? And there's also hospitals along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and there's burial grounds along with them as well. Has anybody looked into any of those?
Yes, I think that the general answer to your question is yes. Every case is unique, though, so when we have any information on where an individual might be, and if there was an association with some history like that, then we would be. So generally, yes.
Cool, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions in this extensive question and answer period? Okay. Well, with that, I want to say thank you so very much. And I want to reiterate what Master Sergeant Sievert had to say. We do have some folks back there who want to hear your story. You got some information. You know somebody that has some information. Get them back in the corner of the hospitality room. They'll take some notes. And when they're done, and turn those notes over to the investigators and the people at DPAA, and then they will get forwarded to where the JFAs can do their work, but they need all the information they can get. If you have artifacts or know anybody who has artifacts, please get them to DPAA or through Mission or through the League. What they need primarily in artifacts is they need pictures, they need identification, they need journals, they need letters. And that not only is just from U.S. soldiers, but also from the Vietnam, Cambodian, and Laotian soldiers, because those also provide information. They're also very valuable in, as was brought out with the presentation by Dave Hoffman, that those things can sometimes be used to also, from the other countries, to be used, because they are also looking to try to find their people. We're not alone in this. And that's something to remember in the human aspect of it. We're not alone. They want to find theirs too. So with that, I want to, just a moment. Yeah, Ann, what you got? Please.
I guess I should turn around and stand up like you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you come on up. You come on up.
I'm fine here. Okay. It's okay. What I wanted to say was I really... am I close? Okay, I'm trying the right way. The presentation I really did enjoy that Dave Huffman made on the visits to the museums and the processes and the meetings with Vietnamese officials and U.S. officials and all of that. That is so familiar, and it is exactly what needs to be added on to the 50 years of doing this. It's what keeps that personal relationship, and it's useful. We started the kind of artifact turnovers clear back at the beginning, and the captain mentioned the 1985 joint excavation. That was the first one in country in Vietnam, and it was Johnny Webb who was there. He just had a birthday this week, so I sent him a note. But he's still alive, is what I'm saying. I'm just saying those kind of activities and bringing people into contact directly are extremely important. And the artifacts that you may have, the recollections you may have, all of the interactions between Americans and Vietnamese, all of that is very helpful. And it really helped me to see it all and remind me all of the umpteen years to Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. I lost count of the trips when it reached 35. It was too many. But all of those things that you saw on those slides, in those categories, they're also true. The only thing we'd all like to see is intensified efforts on the investigations. And I was very sorry, as was David Gordon, that DIA's representative wasn't able to be here so that he could talk about the cooperation and activities in Cambodia, where they have been allowing us to have the contractors for quite some time, with very cooperative in doing that kind of thing. Not so much so Vietnam, but they're getting there. The Lao, sort of, yes, getting there. The Lao are so much less sophisticated. Everything is sometimes harder there than it can be in a more advanced country like Vietnam. So I just wanted to add that and appreciated the very good explanations that were given on the identification process. And the Senior Master Sergeant, it's good to see you again. You had so much experience in Vietnam, and all of you. And welcome to the new Director for Operations, because we are deeply grateful for everything that advances that, quote, highest operational priority for Vietnam War. Everybody in this room is, I assure you. Thank you.
Hey, David.
Yeah, thank you, Ann. Just a moment. Dave, you have some moment? Here.
Just want to remind everybody, I'll be in the main room at a table as well with Jeannie and Mandy, and we'll be there throughout the day. If you have any artifacts, please come up and talk to us about it. If we need to arrange for the shipping or anything like that, we will do that for you. We have an MOU with DPAA, and the artifact transitions we will continue to run through them and through the U.S. government to the Vietnamese. So thank you.
Thank you, David. Captain Bonner, do you or any of your folks have anything you'd like to add?
David, I really appreciate you including us and doing all the technological acrobatics to get us set up today. I think it went off as well as it could have, so I appreciate that. Thank you for giving us the opportunity today. And we'll go out here on our end from Hawaii. Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha, and we will look forward to seeing you guys next year. Before the group leaves here, those that are left, we have some coins, POWMI coins. For those who don't have one, Jim Shorter will be in the back and we'll be able to hand out. We ask that if you have one already, please don't pick one up, because we like to pass them out to those who do not. So want to thank you all very much for being here. It was a pleasure to be able to try to bring this to you. We'll try to do the same type of thing every year where we have a case study and hopefully one of our own that we can talk about how they've been recovered, what they went through and how they've been recovered. So we will keep the mission going from now on. Thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch.